This is a production of China Central Television, America.
It's the talk of Hollywood, but it's not about the latest blockbuster. Tinseltown is being accused of whitewashing. Actors of color say they've had enough of being overlooked for major roles. And what's worse, characters that are originally created as minorities are being replaced by Caucasian actors. This week on Full Frame, how stereotypes, both negative and positive, are a downfall to minorities. I'm Mei Lee in Los Angeles. Let's take it full frame. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Full Frame. Jason Scott Lee is a Chinese-American actor who's perhaps best known for his breakout performance in the biopic Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, about the legendary Chinese-American martial artist.
It's your birth certificate. Bruce Lee. It sounded very American.
I'm going to America. French fries. Sky's the limit, that's what they say.
Not a Chinaman's chance. They say that too?
I'm different.
You kind don't understand English. You guys killed my dad in Korea. You think I'm happy to see you, my Jim?
Don't touch me.
Or what? Huh?
Or I'll touch you back.
After his acclaimed portrayal of Bruce Lee, Jason went on to star as Mowgli in Disney's 1994 live adaptation of The Jungle Book. He became an inspiration to other Asian actors who rarely saw relatable faces in Hollywood. But he eventually took a hiatus from Hollywood for almost 2 decades because the roles for Asian actors, especially Asian males, were limited. Now, today, Lee is back in Hollywood and says things are improving, but the fight for a higher profile is still ongoing for Asian actors. Joining us now from Singapore to talk more about this issue is Jason Scott Lee. Jason, welcome to Full Frame. Glad to have you.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you. I'm very honored to be here.
Well, Jason, let's start from the beginning. Was acting something that you always wanted to do, or did you just sort of happen to get into it?
It wasn't something I always wanted to do. It was. It actually stemmed from sports, I think, because being an athlete in high school and then after high school, there was this appreciation of audience, I guess, applause and adoration, and I think that kind of set the stage for my interest in acting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it kind of started from that, and then as I got into Los Angeles by way of academics and things, I started pulling more towards the stage and TV and film acting.
Right. Well, this is where it all happens here in Hollywood. But you mentioned you grew up in Hawaii. And then, as you said, you then came to Los Angeles. So Hawaii being majority Asian population, as we know, coming to LA and trying to make it in Hollywood, was that sort of a cultural shock for you?
Yeah, I grew up in the islands in Hawaii, and we have a sort of our language of our own. We speak Pidgin English.
Right.
So even landing myself in Fullerton, California, in Orange County.
Right.
It was fairly what we called white bread. So I had to sort of retune my linguistics and try and fit in. And I think that's kind of been the game ever since, is trying to fit in. And I think the hard part was, I think the easy part for me is that I was fairly naive at the time, and I didn't have expectations. So that was sort of made the journey somewhat easier, because there was no requirement to excel or anything. It was just, kind of a self-driven thing.
Right. But it must have been tough at that point when you were starting, because there were very few Asians acting in Hollywood, and those that were just getting probably bit parts. and not much exposure. So tell me what it was like for you when you would have to go out on auditions. What kind of reactions would you get from casting directors?
In the early days, let's say the late 80s, and the roles were very, very limited. I mean, there was a lot of projects that were coming up that were immigrant roles, mostly one-liner bit roles or even one-word bit roles.
Right.
And like I said, I was a young actor. I was 19 years old, and there wasn't a lot of expectations. And I think the big turnaround for me came when I started doing leads, or when I started getting bigger roles, say in CBS After School Special or something. And those, then you really started to see, once you start getting into the larger supporting roles or the leading roles, then you really started seeing how inhibited your opportunities were.
Right, right. And lots of stereotyping, which we're going to talk about in a second. But your big break, of course, was when you played Bruce Lee in the biopic. That must have been incredibly intimidating and exciting at the same time for you. Tell me what that was like.
I grew up with Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee was an icon for me. My father used to take me to his films.
Yeah.
And I was completely blown away. Even in my first meeting with Universal, over the phone, they told me to come in for this project called Dragon. They did not tell me it was a biopic for Bruce Lee.
Oh my, you had no idea.
So when I sat down,
wow.
I had no idea. When I sat down with them, they explained to me, and I immediately thought to myself, I must be kidding myself. There's no way I can. I didn't have any martial arts training at the time.
Wow.
I didn't. I always make the comparison that it's like asking someone who never danced before to portray Rudolf Nureyev in a story like that. So yeah, I was and it was a heavy weight. It was a heavy burden on my shoulders because I was just starting my career. I was 25 years old, and I thought, if I make a fool of myself in this, and I've seen a lot of actors try to portray him and fail miserably, or kind of somewhat make a mockery of it, and I felt like, God, in my heart, I just wanted to do the man justice. I just wanted to make something that was incredibly dynamic and that really sold that his charisma, his energy, and his just zest for life. And I had problems with the training. When I was getting into it, I actually had an emotional breakdown through it.
Oh, really?
Just because I wasn't. I thought the train was moving too fast.
Huh.
And so in hindsight, it was kind of necessary because there are certain issues that you need to plow through, and obstacles that you need to break through, and sometimes they don't happen unless you invest or that kind of emotion or make that kind of commitment.
Right, it's got to be a full-blown commitment to a role like that, especially because he's so iconic and so well known. That had to be a life-changing experience, and also for your career. But let's get to the nitty-gritty here about why we're talking today, and that's the stereotypes that exist in Hollywood, and to this day for Asian actors who want to make it in Hollywood. The Bruce Lee story, that was about an Asian man. So therefore, that was an easier role for an Asian actor to play. So what are your thoughts on what's going on in Hollywood to this day? We hear a lot of criticism still about whitewashing. Oscar's so white. That was a big controversy, earlier this year.
Yeah.
What do you think now? What do you think's happening?
Oh boy, it's finally getting the recognition. The issues are getting the recognition it actually needs.
Yeah.
That's my point of view. I've been up for a number of the more recent roles that were significantly Asian in origin, and was passed on. So it's I always thought, back in the 90s, that I thought it would go forward. There was always this promise that, things are going to change, but it's gotten somewhat more confusing.
How so?
And I look at it, well, back when in the 80s when we started, feature films were sort of this elite kind of place to be in. And that's why you had the Oscars.
Right.
TV and internet was not as prevalent. And it kind of, it's rearing its head now that TV has much more diversity.
For sure.
And the internet, if you look at YouTube, has the percentage of ethnic groups that are involved in front of the camera is huge.
Right.
And so feature films still carry that kind of that power, where it's still trying to create an elite program.
Right.
And along with that, come egos and sort of, it goes hand in hand. And so with that, it's
so
like,
Jason,
yeah.
who do you blame then for this problem in Hollywood, especially like you're saying in the movie business? Is it the executives? Is it the producers? Is it the decision makers? Is it the audience? Is it the role of actors like you who need to push the envelope a little bit more? What do you think?
I really contend that it's all of the above.
Okay.
Yeah, because I'm not a personality kind of thing to blame anybody or thing. If we want to really show our stories, and if our culture is so much more different than mainstream Western culture, then we should write our own stories. We should develop so that we have ourselves to blame for that. On the other end of the spectrum, we are looking at executives, and we are looking at studios that have the inclination to make decisions to change things or enhance, the situation for the better, but are not making those calls.
Right.
So you do have, back and forth issues.
Because it is frustrating, Jason. I mean, me as also an Asian American, when I see constantly these decisions being made about the roles and who's being cast for these roles that are originally meant to be an Asian character, and then they cast someone who's Caucasian. And that's still happening today over and over and over again. So I can't imagine what it's like to be in the business as an Asian actor. I see it from the outside, and I get frustrated. So it must be, I don't know. I mean, do you feel like it's one step forward, two steps back? I mean, that's sort of the feeling I get from folks here in Hollywood who are trying to make a difference, and yet they don't see enough change going on.
Yeah, that's true. It is one step forward, two steps back. I mean, it's hard to really. I think, like you say, like now. Okay, let's say we have actors of Asian American descent who are speaking out. Mm-hmm. But if you notice, most of the people that are speaking out are actors that are doing pretty well for themselves.
Right.
They're working actors. They're highly visible. What you don't see is a lot of actors who are not working or who are afraid to step up to the plate.
Right.
And be vocal because their jobs are pending. They got bills to pay.
Yep.
They got kids to feed, and a lot of people aren't willing to step forward. And I think as a collective, Asian Americans, unless they're like third generation, they're not really vocal about a lot of issues to be argumentative about. Mm-hmm. We tend to be, as a collective, a little more do the work, keep your head down, stay humble, kind of thing. So there's, I think, over the years, it's been that way. There's been individuals who have been outspoken, who've had the platform at some point or another.
Right.
And maybe it hasn't been a strong enough push. It hasn't had a big wave of effect like how the African Americans have had in their approach to entertainment industry.
Right. It does seem
by storm.
Yeah, it does. Sorry, Jason, to interrupt, but it does seem like we are starting to see this paradigm shift that's a bit stronger this time around. That Asian.
Yeah, I think the.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, go ahead.
I think the newer generation are starting to actually become more Western, become more vocal. Step into the light for politics as well, and as well as racism. So
right. Well, Jason, you're right now in Singapore, in Asia, and so I think it's pretty interesting what we're seeing when it comes to media, and especially the power of Asia, particularly the power of China when it comes to Hollywood wanting to, seize the moment and get that market share in China. So do you think that's going to shift the way that the media behaves and the way that movies are cast because of the growing power of Asia?
That's been happening for about 20 years now, and it's the money grab that's there. Whether there are Asians in films or not, if they're gonna, make big bucks off of any kind of film featuring, say, predominantly Caucasian actors, then they're gonna put money towards it. Unless, it's like in China, they want to see their own stars. They want to see, their own identity there. So even as an Asian American, we don't quite fit in because maybe our Mandarin is not as fluent as what they demand.
Right.
So I haven't seen much change in that direction. Hollywood is definitely collecting a lot of money for Hollywood films.
Yeah.
And they're doing very well in China. But you don't see a significant change, meaning the investors from China are not particular about who is in the movie.
Yeah.
And maybe, we always had this thing, throughout my career about being the token Asian. It's like you look at some of the big blockbuster superhero movies and they'll put in a token Asian.
Yep.
But they will not give that bigger role or the leading role to an Asian American.
Right.
But they'll give you like little kibbles and bits, yeah?
Jason, one last question. What are you up to? What are some of the projects that you're working on, and what can we expect from you?
I'm actually getting behind the pen, and I'm actually writing, so I'm looking forward to doing stuff. There's some things happening with YouTube Red. There's also some indie films that show a lot of redemption, a lot of heart in.
Great.
I got stuff going on. It's fun,
Good. Well, I'm glad to hear it. Well, Jason, it was such a pleasure talking to you today. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Nice to meet you. Thank you all.
Okay, take care.
Bye-bye.
Well, diversity is something that can't be ignored as the makeup of moviegoers becomes more and more diverse. So some directors are trying to expose audiences to the talents of minority actors. Asian American director John M. Chu is trying to do just that. He's recently been tapped to direct the movie adaptation of Crazy Rich Asians, a 2013 bestseller novel by Kevin Kwan. Chu says he plans to shoot with an all-star Asian cast. Full Frame correspondent Sandra Hughes recently caught up with the filmmaker to talk about his 2016 release of Now You See Me Too and his thoughts on the state of Hollywood.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Four Horsemen.
The Girl Horsemen. Woo! Yeah!
Now You See Me Too is a caper film with a detour to China.
We jumped off a rooftop in New York.
Where the hell are we?
And we landed in China.
Which is very fitting for its director, John Chu, the youngest of 5 children born to Chinese parents who taught him a work ethic that has taken him from the halls of the University of Southern California Film School to the highest levels of Hollywood in less than a decade.
I think that for me, when I'm making a movie, that's what I focus on, is what am I making, who am I serving, not the fame that may come with it, or the magazine articles that may come with it, or the reviews that may come with it. I try not to let any of those things affect me. That's not why I do it. I always knew from a kid, like, whether people were going to pay me or not, I was always going to make movies. I will continue to for the rest of my life.
It was his college short film that first got him noticed by one of the biggest names in Hollywood, Steven Spielberg.
It's called When the Kids Are Away, and it was about a 17-minute musical short film about the secret life of mothers and what they do when the kids are away for the day, and they sing and dance, of course. It's
exactly what we don't do.
It's a giant musical of all these mothers coming together, and it's sort of a fairy tale in it. What we're trying to do, the texture that we're trying to bring to the project.
From there, he's been working non-stop on films and TV shows. His interest in Hollywood diversity evolved along with his career.
And I started going to China. I'd never been to China before, and talking to companies there to see if there was, I don't know, if a Chinese movie, even Chinese language movie, or an American movie that could have Chinese elements into it, but never really finding the right fit. It never quite, until recently with Crazy Rich Asians, where it spoke to both sides of me. It spoke to me finding my identity balance side, because that's what a lot of the story is about. It also spoke to my family's traditional side of what they think about Asian American, this generation of Asians, and what they think that we should be retaining from their journey. Also my grandparents' side, and also my friends who look into our family and see it. So all those elements were part of this story that I thought was really fascinating, and the fact that it's an all-Asian cast.
Chu's latest project is a movie called Crazy Rich Asians, based on the book by Kevin Kwan. For Chu, it's all coming at a time when diversity is one of the hottest topics in Hollywood.
This year's Academy Awards, held here at the Dolby Theater, were boycotted by many African-American actors because of an absence of nominations. That led to a movement called Oscars So White. But the Academy Awards host, African-American comedian Chris Rock, made a joke using Asian children on stage. That made many Asian Americans in the entertainment industry angry and asking why were they left out of the discussion on diversity.
The results of tonight's Academy Awards have been tabulated by the accounting firm of PricewaterhouseCoopers. They sent us their most dedicated, accurate, and hard-working representatives. I want you to please welcome Ming Zhu, Bao Ling, and David Moskowitz.
The fact that it's a deal now because of a joke, that shows that we haven't had a real discussion about it, because ultimately it is just a joke. But like, we should be talking about deeper things than a joke at an awards show. We should be talking about the actual work and what is actually going to be on the screen to make changes.
So do you feel comfortable in a meeting with, studio bigwigs when you're talking about projects, saying, hey, let's don't just look at the same Emma Stones every time we're looking for a female lead?
No, I don't. I should be doing it, and I am starting to do it, but it absolutely feels uncomfortable. It absolutely makes me feel weird. I wish I could say it didn't, but just talking about race is awkward for me. I don't know how else to put it, but I do now. And it's getting less awkward, and it's getting more like we're all in the conversation.
That conversation was the topic of discussion in Stephen J. Kung's first feature film called A Leading Man.
Cut! I'm not a eunuch. I only play one on TV.
No job is worth your dignity and respect.
The film follows the life of an Asian American actor who gets stereotyped on the road to stardom.
It just shows the hardship of being an Asian American actor in Hollywood, because it's very painful to be in a profession where you can't find a job.
Kung now serves as the co-director of the Asian American Committee at the Directors Guild, fostering the careers of other Asian directors. And he's working on the readaptation of the movie Dear White People.
You want to know why they used to call me Black Mitch? Absolutely.
Nobody called you that.
Into a Netflix original series.
I think America is in search of a great catharsis in terms of what's going on in terms of race. And so when people watch the series in 2017, they're going to see television that's very honest and reflects the world we live in. And that's part of what diversity and inclusion is all about, you know, seeing something on TV that reflects the world, that reflects the multiculturalism around you.
For both Stephen J. Kung and John Chu, growing up in America has given them opportunities. But when they were young, there were few role models on screen or behind the camera.
Ultimately, what would you like to see change in Hollywood?
For a young Asian American to look on the screen and see themselves, that their possibilities of being Superman are just as much as the kid at school who looks like Superman.
And with young Asian talent on the move in Hollywood, that idea is a script just waiting to be written. For Full Frame, this is Sandra Hughes in Hollywood.
Coming up next, one woman's unique attempt to correct Hollywood's racial mistakes. Stay with us. The 2016 Academy Awards reignited the diversity debate in Hollywood, and the Oscars So White campaign dominated social media, fueling outrage and action. The omission of minorities, both in casting and award nominations, was particularly personal to aspiring actor and blogger Michelle Vilmer. Simultaneously discouraged and inspired, she decided to use her blog to share a radical new project, Correcting Yellowface. Using photography, she illustrated Hollywood's practice of whitewashing, casting Caucasians in minority roles. Posing side by side next to non-Asian actresses playing roles clearly meant for Asians, Vilmer chronicled Hollywood's long history of exclusion and stereotyping. Michelle joins me now to tell us more about her fantastic project. I have to say, I thought this was so clever and so powerful in the way you use these images.
Thank you, May.
So what, you know, before I ask you what inspired you, let's go back to when you were growing up as a kid. Asian American kid, just like me, you know, in sort of a white community. Did you realize when you were growing up that you had this Asian identity and you were different? And if so, I mean, how did that shape you?
Absolutely. I mean, I am half Asian. My father is Caucasian, and my mother is Thai Chinese. So I always had one foot in both worlds.
Both cultures, yeah.
But I look mainly Asian.
Yeah.
So there's my identity. And I went to school with mostly white kids most of my life.
Yeah. So did you feel like an outsider? I mean, did that affect the way in which you saw yourself, you know, in society?
Absolutely. Yeah. I felt like an outsider. And I wasn't seeing myself on television and in films.
That's the thing, because, I mean, we were saying before we started the segment, both of us grew up not seeing Asian images in the media at all.
Right.
So what did you think? You noticed that, even as a kid?
I did. You know, I grew up watching black and white movies with my grandfather, and first decided that I wanted to be an actor when I saw Shirley Temple on screen having fun and, you know, wearing costumes and tap shoes, and I wanted to be her.
Yeah.
And my grandfather was in love with Marilyn Monroe. So one of the first movies, yeah, I know. So I used to watch those movies with him, and one of the first grown-up movies I remember watching was Gentlemen Prefer Blondes.
Oh.
And even though I didn't understand the context of what was happening, the title alone.
The title alone.
Yeah, there's so much multi-level messaging within that title.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, because I grew up wanting to have blue eyes and blonde hair, and I wanted my name to be Mary, you know, because again, we were so subjected to those images and those images alone.
I changed my name a few times too. I remember putting clothespins on my nose to make my nose narrower because I was ashamed of what I looked like. It didn't fit in, and it didn't belong on camera, as far as I knew, as far as they were telling me.
It wasn't the accepted image of beauty and what people desired.
Right.
Yeah. Right. So that obviously leads you to this phenomenal project, Correcting Yellowface. Why did you decide to do it? I mean, what made you go and, you know, say to yourself, all right, you know, I'm gonna take this on?
Well, there's been a lot of talk about whitewashing in Hollywood lately, and let's see, I have a blog. I'm a creative person.
Yeah.
I like to make things. I'm always looking for new mediums, and I'm not a great photographer, but I decided to use my voice in this way this time.
Yeah.
So I decided to.
But obviously, you were moved enough and maybe angry enough to do this because, again, it's very powerful. We're going to take a look at some of the images, but you obviously were not just mad, you were like, I'm going to do something about this and make a statement.
A lot of people were talking about it as if it was the first time they were hearing about it. And I've been aware for a while. About 10 years ago, in adulthood, I discovered Anna May Wong, and her story really moved me.
Yep.
I started to write a screenplay about her life, and then I had a family, and that took a back seat. But
and again, a lot of folks in America don't even know who she
was. Okay, well, she was, as you know, the first Chinese-American movie star. And she had a shot at it. But because of the way the world was back then, she was not allowed to play opposite white men on screen.
As a romantic lead, right?
Yes, as a romantic lead.
That was sort of a moral code that was followed in Hollywood.
Yes.
Yeah, so that prevented her from getting a lot of parts that she would have been perfect for.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they were casting white men as
men.
Asian
Exactly,
men.
exactly. So, okay, let's go to some of these photos because they are fantastic and we have to show them off. Let's look at Louise Rayner. Here she is.
The Good Earth.
The Good Earth,
yes,
right?
There
Pearl
she
S.
is.
Buck's book.
I believe she's of German descent, I believe.
German descent, playing a Chinese woman.
Yes.
And so look at you to the right. How was that? What was that like?
I found a black T-shirt and I wrapped it around like a bandana.
Yep.
And I had a Chinese traditional shirt. A friend of mine helped me with the Photoshop to make it look like I had been working in the fields.
Yes, you look tired.
Yes. I didn't wear makeup, so I'm proud of myself for that.
But yeah, there you go. I mean, a real Asian playing that role versus a woman of German descent.
Yeah.
Yeah, but she did go on to apparently. She won the Academy Award for that, didn't she?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the next one. All right, the legendary Katharine Hepburn. She played an Asian woman.
I discovered this when I was searching for yellow-face pictures, and I was shocked.
Amazing.
Shocked.
I had no idea.
This was also another book by Pearl S. Buck, Dragon Seed, and she plays a Chinese villager.
It's incredible. I mean, how she doesn't look Asian. I'm sorry.
She doesn't look Asian, and they must have used some glue and tape to
make her eyes
give her
smaller and
more narrow.
Yeah, I definitely prefer your picture. All right, let's go to number 3, Myrna Loy. Now, she was a favorite actress to use in different Asian roles for some reason.
Yeah,
right?
for some reason, she just kept getting cast over and over as an Asian woman.
Yep.
There she is, the daughter of Fu Manchu.
Okay. Not convincing.
Which is problematic in a lot of ways, but
sorry, I'm being really cynical about this for obvious reasons. And then here she is again.
And there she is again. And you know, I saw these pictures and I thought, I really wanted to have fun, like she was having fun. And that's why I wanted to be an actress when I was a little girl. I wanted to wear the costumes.
To play
and
dress up.
I wanted to play dress up, and I wanted to be in those roles.
You look fabulous, by the way, in this photo.
Thank you.
Really.
Thank you very much.
That's an amazing
I found
photo.
that headdress in Chinatown.
You did?
I did. I showed the lady the picture, and I'm like, you don't have anything like this, do you? She's like, yeah, right there.
Wow. So. Okay, now we're going to look at, this was in The King and I, right?
The King and I, yes.
Yeah.
So Rita Moreno, obviously Latina, but because I'm part Thai, I had to go for this one.
This outfit of yours is fabulous too.
Yes, I rented that from a Thai store in Thai Town.
In Thai Town, okay. All right, now we're going to go to Emma Stone. This was a recent movie, Aloha, where she's supposedly a quarter Asian, right?
Well, half Asian, a quarter Hawaiian.
A quarter Hawaiian,
a quarter Hawaiian, a quarter Chinese.
Okay. Really?
I know.
I mean, really?
I know.
There was such a backlash about this because that was the most ridiculous casting. Really, it was just so outlandish.
The defense was that her character was not supposed to look Asian.
Okay, she looks whiter than most white people. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
I know.
Yeah, but adorable outfit that you put together.
Oh, thank you.
And let's just talk about one second about the fact that you really had to try and find all of these outfits, and that's where your DIY obviously comes in to try to create some of these looks.
Right, yeah, I did. I created that hat from Aloha.
Right.
And that was fun. I mean, I had a good time doing it. I mean, I can't be angry all
Right,
the time.
right.
I
Find
had
some joy in it as well, right? Okay, now another recent miscasting is Scarlett Johansson, playing a role of a character from comic books, right?
Ghost in the Shell.
And that is a sort of a iconic role to a lot of fans. And so people were really up in arms about this.
Really upset about that.
Yeah.
The character has a Japanese background.
Yeah.
She's a Japanese woman.
Japanese, fully Japanese.
Yes.
Yes.
So
and
here
Scarlett
we are again.
Johansson,
Yeah,
yes.
2016.
That's where I want to ask you, I mean, when you started doing all this research and seeing that it started decades ago, but we're still seeing this happen today, it's pretty frustrating, isn't it?
It's very frustrating. Why is it still happening?
Why is it still happening? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's where I think the Asian community, and tell me what you think about it. I mean, this time it seems like they're vocalizing this a lot more. The frustrations are coming out, and people are really starting to step up and talk about this rather than just letting it go. Do you see that kind of change happening?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're our mother's model minority anymore. You know, we're noisier.
Right.
You know, we're not worried about what other people think. We're not worried about impressing our ancestors.
That's right. That's right. And
or we are, and this is the way that we're doing it. We're speaking up.
Exactly. I mean, by you doing this, you are definitely shedding light on it and talking about the history of it and the fact that it's still happening. So what kind of response have you gotten?
Amazing response,
yeah?
May. Amazing response. I've been moved to tears by the things that people have said. And I had no intention of it going viral the way that it did, but it's been printed in China and Thailand and France and Australia, India, all over. And people have emailed me telling me, thank you.
Are people telling you their own stories?
Yes, they're telling me their own stories and how they look at the pictures and they feel healed in a way.
Wow. Well, Michelle, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
And I'm so proud of you as a fellow Asian American that you brought to light this topic in the way you did, in such a creative way.
Thank you.
All right, good luck to you.
Thanks.
All right, coming up, how one actor is using humor to change Hollywood and society's stereotypes of Middle Eastern characters. We'll be right back. We're going to continue this theme of racial stereotypes. This time, let's take a look at another group that's often misrepresented in the media, the Middle Eastern community. Negative stereotypes are intensifying as anti-Muslim rhetoric is growing. While Iranian-American actor and comedian Maz Jobrani is doing his part to try and change that distorted image. He's appeared on hit TV shows like Grey's Anatomy, Curb Your Enthusiasm, True Blood, and The Tonight Show. Jobrani's hilarious material is spot on when it comes to stereotypes of Muslims and very effective in promoting better understanding.
But no, guys, really, it is exciting to be here. And like I said, you guys are doing a lot culturally, you know, and it's amazing. And it helps change the image of the Middle East in the West. Like, a lot of Americans don't know a lot about us, about the Middle East. I'm Iranian and American. I'm there. I know that you know, I've traveled here. There's so much. We laugh, right? People don't know we laugh. When I did the Axis of Evil comedy tour, it came out on Comedy Central. I went online to see what people were saying about it. I ended up on a conservative website. One guy wrote another guy, said, I never knew these people laughed. Think about it. You never see us laughing in American film or television, right? Maybe like an evil, like, whoa, whoa. I will kill you in the name of Allah. Whoa. But never like, ha, 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 ha. We like to laugh. We like to celebrate life. And I wish more Americans would travel here. I always encourage my friends to travel, see the Middle East. There's so much to see, so many good people. And it's vice versa. And it helps stop problems of misunderstanding and stereotypes of happening.
So true. Well, his 2015 memoir, I'm Not a Terrorist, but I've played one on TV, details life growing up as an Iranian American and his struggles working in Hollywood. Durrani says he and his fellow Middle Eastern American entertainers are often typecast in the stereotypical roles of villains and terrorists. In his bold new comedy film, Jimmy Westwood, American Hero, he parodies these stereotypes and shows that people of Middle Eastern descent can also be leaders, heroes, and most importantly, just normal human beings. Here with me now is Maz Durrani. Maz, great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me, May.
Yeah.
I appreciate you having
You're
me.
hilarious. I mean, in so many ways. But I mean, it's so nice to see when comedy can address really serious issues, right, of stereotypes and racism.
Yeah, absolutely. I think comedy, I've been a fan of comedy since I was a kid.
Yeah.
I was a big fan of Eddie Murphy's when I was a kid.
Yep.
And I wanted to be like him. But then once I started doing stand-up about 18 years ago, I started listening a lot more and watching a lot more of Richard Pryor, George Carlin, some of these guys who were getting political.
The old school guys.
The old school guys, but they got political and they had social commentary. And I think that comedy can really do a good job of that. That's why a show like The Daily Show is so great now, because there's constant social and political commentary going on.
And it's educational, right? I mean, because you're sending a message out in the form of laughter, but it definitely resonates that way, even better sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's funny, I was on a panel one time with the comedian D.L. Hughley, and I always quote him. He said that comedy is like giving people their medicine, but in orange juice.
That's perfect. That's brilliant.
Yeah, so they don't taste it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, I think a lot of times people are more open to listening to a message that comes through comedically as opposed to just listening to a politician speak.
Totally agree.
Right away, you're biased against what they're going to say.
Exactly.
But when you're there laughing at a comedy club or at a theater, you might not even realize that the guy's sending a message until later on in the car. You go, oh, wait, he was trying to get a point across.
And you actually remember it because it was so dang funny, right?
And I think one of the more important things, too, is as a comedian and an actor of Middle Eastern descent, for me, it's that, comedians and actors from that part of the world in America, it's a relatively new thing.
Yeah.
When I first started 18 years ago, there weren't any other Middle Eastern comedians. There was a handful of us.
Right.
Now there's a lot more. So the thing that's interesting has been, I think it's important for audiences to come to a show and sit with an audience with people from that background and laugh with them. I think that beyond just the comedian on stage, they can look around the room and see, oh, wow, there's Iranians laughing, there's Arabs laughing, there's a Muslim laughing, there's a lady in a hijab laughing next to me. I think it blows people's minds.
Well, before we get to talking about how you're trying to break these stereotypes, let's go back a little bit to your childhood. Your family immigrated when you were 6 years old?
Yeah, we were 6 years old, right around the time of the Iranian Revolution.
Right.
We moved from Iran to America.
To Tiburon,
right? Northern California,
in the Bay Area, which is pretty white, isn't it?
It's very white. I'll tell you how white it is, because my dad, being Iranian, he was a self-made millionaire, was a successful man. And I think Iranians, there's a group of Iranians who tend to be very ostentatious.
Yes.
I always say, like, now living in Los Angeles, a lot of those Iranians came to Los Angeles, and Los Angeles is ostentatious. Iranians are ostentatious. It's like ostentation on steroids, right? You can see it on that TV show, The Shahs of Sunset, right?
Yes.
It's over the top.
Oh, yeah.
But it's interesting because going to Marin, where it's a rich county, it's a wealthy place, but a lot of the rich people in Marin were a little more subtle with their wealth. So they would drive Volvos and Saabs. And here comes my dad from Iran, and he shows up and he buys a Rolls Royce. Oh, and I was like, what are you doing, man? It's like, ruining my childhood.
Wow. So was that tough for you, though? I mean, that must have been a cultural shock.
It was very tough, because when you're a kid, you're trying to blend in. You don't want to stand out as a different kid, right?
And then when you're trying to blend in to a new culture, there's got to be that clash sometimes,
Yeah,
right?
and I really like to push that envelope. Like, even my stand-up sometimes, I like to kind of show the hypocrisy. Like, when I did my book, I'm Not a Terrorist, but I Played One on TV.
Yeah.
And on the cover of the book, I intentionally put on a Palestinian keffiyeh, the headgear, and I'm holding like a Wile E. Coyote bomb, and I've got an expression on my face like, how did I end up here?
Yeah.
And I'm trying to make fun of how Hollywood mixes us up all together. I was trying to make fun of that. Now, Iranians are very sensitive to not being called Arabs because they just want people to know that Arabs and Iranians are different. Well, I put the cover of the book on my Facebook page and I said, hey, my book's coming out, please check it out. And some Iranian lady sent me an email on Facebook, you know, why are you wearing Arab headgear on the cover of your book? We are not Arabs, we are Persian. And I had to write her back. I was like, calm down, lady. I'm trying to make fun of Hollywood, right? And it was just funny, this back and forth that I had with this lady. And I was trying to point out that, you know, I understand that the world needs to know that we're different. But I feel that your approach to it, this lady's approach, is somewhat racist. You're trying to say we're better.
Right.
You know, why are you mixing us up with these people, these savages? And I was like, you need to check yourself. Let's really, like, we are all citizens of the world. And I just like to put that on people sometimes.
Yeah, through your comedy, which is the way to go, honestly. Well, let's talk about your experience in Hollywood because, you know, obviously the show is about how the, you know, minorities are still having their issues and still running into those obstacles, right? For you, you've openly talked about that, you know, you guys are always cast as the villains, the terrorists and all that. So tell me about it. Do you see a change at all, or do you see it getting worse, better?
Well, you know, I think that overall, my thought process is that I think when an immigrant culture comes from another country to America, the first generation that comes, the parents that come, they set up shop and they want their kids to be doctors and lawyers and engineers.
Definitely.
That's it, because that's all they know.
That's all they know.
And they go, look, I fought in a civil war to get you over here. Right. You're not gonna be a comedian, right? I don't even know what that means. Right.
Your parents probably weren't psyched about that.
They were not at all. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but what's interesting is though, as we come to America and we assimilate, we realize that you can have a career in the arts. You can have a career in entertainment. And furthermore, we realize that you can have a voice. And I think I'm seeing more and more people from these backgrounds, whether it's Iranians or Arabs or Muslims or even like Asian Americans. Like there's a lot of people that are getting in behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And once we have people behind the scenes, then I think we start telling our stories a little bit better.
Right.
I don't necessarily blame Hollywood because I'm sitting there going, look, if I'm a guy who's never had an experience with, I don't know any Middle Easterners, I don't know Muslims, I don't know Arabs, I don't know Iranians, I'm writing a movie that's taking place during the Iraq War, well, I'm going to make all the Iraqis bad guys because they were the bad guys.
Yeah.
It just makes sense because that's all I know. But if I were an Iraqi and I were writing that same movie, I might sit there and go, wait a minute, I know it's about the Iraq War, but let me show you how this one guy got caught up in the war that was a good guy.
Yeah.
Right? So I do feel that there is some promise, but I think we have a long way to go still.
Yeah, I mean, that you're saying that's one way of doing it, where you get more people behind the scenes to be more of the creators. But you actually took a bolder action on your part to say, okay, you know what? I'm not going to play these roles anymore.
Yeah, you know, what happened was, so early in my career, I did a couple of parts, like 2 or 3 parts where I played a terrorist. And that was just because I thought that's what you got to do. I thought, well, you get an audition, you go on the audition. I didn't realize you could tell your agents and everybody else, no, I don't want to do this. So, and also I had a day job and I was trying to get out of the day job. So I thought the more of my jobs, more of these jobs I get, the more, first of all, I'm making money to help me get out of the day job.
Right.
But secondly, it's leading somewhere for my career. And so I did those. I did a Chuck Norris movie of the week where I played a terrorist, and it was horrible.
Oh, yeah.
I did
Chuck Norris.
Yeah, Chuck Norris. Then I played a terrorist in the TV show 24. And then I realized, I was like, you know, I don't like doing these parts. And there's good and bad to all that, is that I said no, and then the other parts I've gotten have been all over the place. So I've, you know, for example, in the movie The Interpreter, which was a Sidney Pollack film with Nicole Kidman and Sean Penn, I played an Arab American Secret Service agent. I mean, how cool is that?
Yeah.
And my ethnicity wasn't even an issue in the movie.
Right.
And then I don't mind, I tell people, I don't mind playing cab drivers or falafel shop owners, or because I think they're kind of, those people exist, and I've seen them and I've met them.
Yeah,
and,
they're real folks.
Yeah, and so, you know, some people think like, oh, that's still stereotyping, but I go, you know what, that's closer to where I want to be. Really, I've just drawn a line on the terrorist thing.
Yeah, which is understandable. But what do you think now, right now, there's so much anti-Muslim rhetoric, right? And that's pervasive. And talk about stereotypes and like grouping everyone together. It's just, you know, negativity towards just that entire region.
It's one of the dumbest things I've seen in my life. I really think people are stupid when they say stuff like that. Like, I mean, I see whether it's Donald Trump talking about it, like, I mean, or his followers or anybody. When you have an attack, let's say like the San Bernardino attacks, and they pledge allegiance to ISIS, and then Donald Trump says we should shut the borders to any Muslims coming in till we figure out what's going on. And it's just, I'm an immigrant. I came during the Iranian Revolution. That's when the hostage crisis happened. I would have been victimized probably under Donald Trump because he probably, like, let's just say hypothetically, Donald Trump were president back then. And he said, we're going to shut the doors to any Muslims coming to America because Iranians have taken hostages. Well, number one, a lot of the people leaving those countries, people that left Iran to come to America, were trying to get away from that government.
Absolutely.
We didn't support that government. We are a lot more pro-American, or let's say pro-Western, and we want our freedoms. We came to America.
Which is the case with a lot of immigrants.
That's what the immigrants
They're
are coming for.
to the land of milk and honey, where there's opportunity and freedom.
Yeah, and listen, in all honesty, we have a big hand in a lot of the disasters that are going on in the Middle East. Like, if we hadn't attacked Iraq to start with, a lot of this stuff might not have happened, might not have played out the way it did. And so when you have refugees coming to America for an opportunity, I would say a majority of those people are coming because they love the opportunity of America. They are getting away from wars. Those are people that will be patriotic, that appreciate America. And for us to shut the door and go, no, you guys can't come in, and not look at the specifics of what happened. The guy who carried out that act, or the Orlando shooter, were born in America, or were American citizens. It's mind-boggling to me.
It is. What I found interesting is that you wrote an op-ed, I think it was a column, where you talk about the Italian-American experience in the media. So Sopranos, right? They're a bunch of gangs. It was about the mafia, right? But the reason why that works, there's a balance, was that there was also comedies like Everybody Loves Raymond, a nice Italian-American family. So you had that nice balance of good and bad, whatever. But with the Middle Eastern community, there's not that kind of representation.
Well, I think there's a couple things. I think, first of all, you know, I know some people were upset about The Sopranos. Some Italians were upset about it. And like I said, you sit back and you go, well, at least you do have Everybody Loves Raymond, or you do have some other positive people in the media, whether it's actors like Al Pacino and Robert De Niro. Sure, they play gangsters and what have you, but still, they're worshipped in America. So you have that going. I think that the problem with the media and Middle Easterners and Muslims and people from that part of the world is a high percentage of the time when you see us, it's just the negative. We don't have a sitcom. We don't have a show. I'm not sure if the networks are ready for it. I don't know how it would be done. There was a show called Little Mosque on the Prairie that was out in Canada for a little bit. Did well in Canada. They tried to bring it here. It didn't work. I did a pilot a few years ago. It was based on a book called Funny and Farsi. The author is Firouzeh Dumas, and she'd written a story about how her family immigrated to Newport Beach in the early 70s, and they were the only Iranians in Newport Beach. And it was actually a funny show, and we shot the pilot, and it didn't get picked up. It was kind of like Fresh Off the Boat, but with Iranians. And so I think the networks are a little risk-averse when it comes to anything that might be too edgy in that way. And
especially now, do you think?
I think
so. Do you think it's a worse situation now because of what we just talked about, because of all of this anti-Muslim rhetoric?
Listen, I mean, imagine if you had a family that were like a Muslim family show or something, right? I think if it were mid-season and they're working on it, there's probably even things that you think are not controversial become controversial. Like, for example, in my own stand-up, I do material about the LGBT community, and part of it is I'm trying to push that in front of, I know that there's like Iranians and Arabs at the show, and I try to, my joke is based off of Bruce Jenner becoming Caitlyn Jenner. And I talk about in the material, I go, I actually support it. I go, good for him. He knew he wanted to be a woman. That's amazing. I go, I can't decide what to have for dinner. This guy knew he wanted to be a woman, right? So, but my point I try to make in that joke is I try to talk about how I try to put it put the mirror in front of them and go, don't judge, you know, just you know. But again, after the Orlando shootings, that material became controversial because I knew that if I brought it up, people would be on edge a little bit. So if you take that now in the bigger picture, and you put it on a TV show, I'm sure the networks probably are a little wary of like, well, what happens if we have a Muslim family and there's something like this happen? Now we got to do an episode where the kid's being bullied, you know. So I think they're a little wary of it.
And Hollywood doesn't want to take too many risks, right?
They don't
because
want
it's all about the bottom line.
Bottom line.
But speaking of Hollywood, you made this movie,
I made
Jimmy
a movie.
Westwood,
yeah,
American Hero, which is, you know, kind of making fun of these stereotypes, right?
Yeah, I made a movie, Jimmy Westwood, American Hero. I describe it as the Persian Pink Panther meets Borat.
I love it.
Yeah, it's a silly movie. You know, I co-wrote it with a guy named Amir Ohebsian. We co-wrote it, we co-produced it with the two of us and Ray Mohit, and then and I star in it. And our goal was, listen, growing up in Iran, the first 6 years of my life, but even after that, when I came to America, I was always a big fan of Peter Sellers' Pink Panther.
Great series.
Just loved him. You know, bumbling idiot.
Totally.
So we wanted to create a character of Middle Eastern descent that was a little bumbling, but saves the day.
All right.
You know.
Well, we have a clip.
Oh, good.
So why don't we take a look at it?
All right.
Mama, Mr. Jamshid.
Just call me Jimmy.
What's your occupation?
We are not here to occupy you. We only come in peace.
I think we've got our guy.
Jimmy Westwood, like Clint Eastwood, but Westwood.
You know, some people turn out to be as dumb as they look. I'm gonna get crucified for this.
Oh my God, that looks hilarious, honestly.
you.
But here's what I did not know. You had to crowdfund to get some of the financing for this,
Listen, my respect for filmmakers has gone up so high.
Has it?
Yeah.
It ain't easy, is it?
It ain't easy because as a stand-up comedian, you do show up, there's a microphone, you tell your jokes.
Right.
Right? You hope to, like, you know, you do it a lot, you grow fan base. But you just hope people show up and you can tell your jokes.
Yeah.
Movie making is a whole other level. You write the script, you think you're done, you're like, no, now you need the money. So then to get the money, we went and we started with some crowdfunding. And when I first put it on Indiegogo, it was Indiegogo, I had about like 20,000 Facebook fans. So I was like, well, if everyone puts $1, we got $120,000.
Right.
Well, we put it out and nobody was giving any money.
Oh, no.
I think everyone's used to getting free stuff now.
Oh, no.
And then
that must have been kind of crushing.
It was crushing. And then we look at the analytics, and I realized like 40,000 of my fans were Egyptian, another 30,000 in Jordan. And I was like, wait a minute, these people aren't even real. Like, I think I was working with a company who was like helping me increase my fan base.
Oh.
But I think that they just got some guys in Egypt that just go like this.
Oh.
You know what I'm saying? And it's funny.
So you actually had 5 fans.
I had 5 fans, so we made $5. And no, we basically ended up then we did a couple of fundraisers within the crowdfunding. We made a little bit of money there, and that got our seed money.
Okay.
Then we got some investors to put money in, and then we made the movie. And then I thought, well, that's it. Now we've made the movie. Someone's going to distribute it. Then we got into a comedy festival, won a couple of comedy awards, but then we couldn't get a big distributor to help us.
Oh.
And it's funny. Well, here's what's interesting. I thought the biggest obstacle was going to be having a movie with a Middle Eastern lead, an American movie with a Middle Eastern hero. I thought that was the biggest obstacle. The biggest obstacle is just being an independent movie in this environment.
Oh.
Because you're competing against Captain America.
Right.
And then the next week you're competing against X-Men.
Yes.
Then the next week is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And as I'm going through this, I'm like, how many superheroes do we have? And what does that say about us as a society? Like, how insecure are we that we need superheroes?
We do. They need to come save the day.
They got to save the day. I think that our lives are so miserable that we feel like every week there's got to be a hero that I got to go see.
Well, Maz, you might be the next hero then.
I just want normal man.
Yeah, well,
you
could be the next American hero, judging from this movie. But congratulations on getting it done.
Yeah, I know.
And good luck with that. But it was so great having you on the show.
Thanks
so much. That was really fun.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that's it for this week. Join the conversation with us on social media. We are CCTV America on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. And you can also watch Full Frame on our mobile app, available worldwide on any smartphone for free. Search CCTV America in your app store to download it today. And get the latest news headlines and connect to us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Weibo. All of our interviews can also still be found online at cctv-america.com. And of course, let us know what you'd like us to take Full Frame next. Simply email us at fullframe@cctv-america.com. Until then, I'm May Lee in Los Angeles. We'll see you next time.